The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council gleamed like a jewel suspended in the void of space. Crystalline walls stretched impossibly high, refracting the light of distant stars into dancing rainbows across the polished marble floors. Representatives from 47 worlds sat in their designated alcoves, some floating in shimmering energy fields, others perched on elaborate biomechanical thrones that pulsed with their alien heartbeats. Ambassador Helena Cross stood at the central podium, her crisp navy uniform a stark contrast to the exotic garments and natural forms surrounding her. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes held the determined gleam of someone who had spent months preparing for this moment. Behind her, the blue marble of Earth rotated slowly on a holographic display, its beauty a reminder of what she was fighting to protect. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Helena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. Humanity comes before you today not as conquerors or supplicants, but as beings seeking their rightful place among the stars. We offer our knowledge, our creativity, and most importantly, our capacity for growth and change. In the observation deck high above, General Victor Stone watched through reinforced transparent steel, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The old soldier's silver hair caught the ambient light as he leaned forward, every muscle tense despite his calm exterior. Beside him, junior officers monitored communication channels and defensive systems, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Torres, her voice barely audible, "we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the Crimson Sector." Victor's steel-gray eyes never left Helena's form below. "Maintain all protocols. This is too important to let paranoia derail." Down in the assembly hall, Helena continued her carefully crafted speech. "Earth has faced many challenges throughout our history. We have known war, famine, and division. But we have also known love, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds that unite us when we face adversity together. This is what we offer the galaxy, not just our individual strengths, but our collective determination to build something better." The response from the council was mixed. Some representatives nodded approvingly, their translator implants humming softly as they processed her words. Others remained motionless, their alien features unreadable. The Zephyrian delegation, positioned in an alcove draped with flowing silk in shades of deep purple and gold, seemed particularly attentive. Princess Zayla of the Zephyrian Empire sat forward in her chair, her luminescent blue skin seeming to glow more brightly as Helena spoke. Her silver hair flowed like liquid mercury down her shoulders, and her large dark eyes held an intelligence that many underestimated. Unlike the other Zephyrians, who wore elaborate ceremonial armor, Zayla had chosen a simple but elegant gown that highlighted her natural beauty while maintaining diplomatic propriety. "The human speaks well," she murmured to her aide, a stern-faced male named Thorek, whose scarred features told the story of many battles. "Words are wind, Princess," Thorek replied, his voice carrying the gravelly undertone common to Zephyrian males. "Actions reveal truth." Zayla's lips curved in a slight smile. "Indeed they do. And I sense this human female's actions will speak as loudly as her words." As Helena reached the climax of her speech, the atmosphere in the chamber began to shift. The Crimson Syndicate's representative, a hulking creature with chitinous armor and multiple arms, had been silent throughout the proceedings. Now, one of his secondary arms moved with deliberate slowness toward a concealed weapon port in his chair. "Humanity seeks not dominion, but partnership," Helena declared, her voice rising with passion. "We understand that diversity is strength, that our differences can unite us rather than divide us. We have learned this lesson through centuries of conflict and cooperation on our own world." The energy weapon charged with a low, ominous hum that only the most sensitive beings in the chamber could detect. Princess Zayla's head snapped up, her enhanced senses immediately recognizing the danger. Her mouth opened to cry out a warning, but the Crimson representative was faster. The plasma bolt erupted from his weapon in a brilliant flash of crimson light. It struck Helena's center mass, the superheated energy instantly vaporizing flesh and bone. Where Earth's ambassador had stood seconds before, only a small pile of ash remained, scattered by the chamber's air circulation system. Silence fell like a physical weight upon the assembly. The acrid smell of ozone and death filled the air. Then, slowly, the Crimson representative's mechanical translator crackled to life. "The syndicate votes no," he announced, his multiple eyes glinting with cruel satisfaction. "Humanity is rejected." Chaos erupted throughout the chamber. Some representatives fled their alcoves in terror, while others activated defensive shields. Security drones descended from hidden alcoves in the ceiling, their weapon systems online but uncertain of their target. In the observation deck, General Victor Stone's face had gone pale. His hands trembled slightly as he activated his communication. "Are, this is Stone to Earth Command, Code Omega, repeat Code Omega, Helena is gone." The response came immediately from Admiral Rebecca Storm, her voice cutting through space with crystalline clarity. "Confirmed, General. Protocol 7 is now in effect. Are you prepared to implement?" Victor closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a familiar burden. "Affirmative. God help us all." 3 hours later, in a classified facility orbiting Earth's moon, Dante Rivers received the call that would change his life forever. The former Special Forces operative turned government asset was cleaning his rifle when his secure communication device buzzed with an incoming priority message. Dante was not an imposing figure at first glance. Average height, lean build, with dark hair that was always slightly too long, and brown eyes that held depths most people preferred not to explore. Scars marked his hands and forearms, evidence of a life spent in dangerous places, doing dangerous things. But when he moved, there was a predatory grace that marked him as something far more dangerous than his appearance suggested. "Rivers," he answered, setting down his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Dante, this is Storm. We need you." "When don't you need me, Admiral?" "This is different. They killed Helena." The blood drained from Dante's face. He had known Helena Cross. Since their academy days, had watched her choose diplomacy while he chose warfare. She had been the best of them all, the one who believed humanity could be better than its violent past. "When do I leave?" "Transport is already en route." "Dante, this isn't a standard mission. You're going in alone, deep cover, with a single objective, which is make them listen by any means necessary." As the transport ship slipped through hyperspace toward the Galactic Council's neutral territory, Dante stared out at the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel and thought about Helena's last words. Partnership, not dominion. Cooperation, not conquest. He checked his gear one final time. Modified sniper rifle capable of piercing any known armor, communication devices that could slice through any jamming, and a small device that would project his image and voice throughout the council chamber when activated. Most importantly, he carried a data chip containing everything Earth knew about the Crimson Syndicate's illegal activities. But as the ship dropped out of hyperspace and the council station grew larger in the viewport, Dante felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Uncertainty. He was a weapon, forged by war and sharpened by necessity. But Helena had been trying to prove that humanity was more than its capacity for violence. Unknown to him, in her quarters aboard the council station, Princess Zayla stared out at the same stars and wondered if the human diplomat's death would mean war, or something else entirely. Her enhanced empathic abilities had allowed her to sense the genuine desire for peace in Helena's words, and her death felt like a wound to the princess's own spirit. "Thorek," she called to her aide, who was reviewing security protocols in the adjacent room. "Yes, Princess?" "Double our guard rotation. And prepare my formal diplomatic credentials. If the humans send another representative, I want to be ready to receive them." "Princess, the Syndicate has made their position clear. Any further human presence could be seen as an act of war." Zayla turned from the viewport, her dark eyes blazing with determination. "Then perhaps it is time for someone to stand up to the Syndicate." The human female spoke of partnership and cooperation. "Her death has shown me that some ideas are worth the risk." As the hours passed and preparations were made on all sides, none of them could know that their paths were about to intersect in ways that would change not just their own lives, but the fate of worlds. Love, they say, conquers all. But first, it must survive the battlefield of politics, prejudice, and the simple human need for justice. The stage was set. The players were moving into position, and somewhere in the void between stars, destiny was preparing to deal a hand that no one could have predicted. Dante Rivers was coming to the Galactic Council, and with him came the promise of change. Whether that change would bring peace or war remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Humanity would not go quietly into the night, and some bonds are stronger than the vastness of space itself. The Council Station's maintenance shafts were a maze of conduits, ventilation systems, and forgotten access tunnels that honeycombed through the massive structure like arteries in some colossal organism. Dante Rivers moved through them with the fluid grace of a predator, his enhanced suit masking his heat signature and dampening the sound of his movements. 3 days of careful reconnaissance had mapped every route, every security checkpoint, every blind spot in the station's defenses. His target was the main assembly hall, where an emergency session was being called to address the human incident. The official reports described Helena's death as an unfortunate escalation during tense negotiations. Dante knew better. He had seen the classified footage from Earth's surveillance drones, witnessed the deliberate nature of the Crimson Syndicate's attack. As he reached his chosen vantage point, high in the chamber's crystalline dome, Dante began setting up his equipment. His rifle was a work of art, custom-built for situations exactly like this. It could punch through energy shields, armor plating, or in a pinch, serve as a very expensive club. More importantly, his communication gear would let him hijack the chamber's broadcast systems when the time came. Below, the assembly was already in session. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled their alcoves, their voices creating a symphony of alien languages that the universal translators struggled to parse. At the center of it all, the Crimson Syndicate's delegate lounged in his chair like a satisfied predator, his multiple arms gesturing dismissively as he spoke. But Dante's attention was drawn to the Zephyrian section, where Princess Zayla sat. With perfect posture, her luminescent skin seeming to pulse with barely contained emotion. Even from his elevated position, he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the arms of her chair. She was angry, and trying very hard not to show it. "The matter is settled," the Crimson representative was saying, his mechanical translator giving his words a harsh, grinding quality. "The human delegation overstepped boundaries that have been established for millennia. The response was proportionate and necessary." Several representatives murmured agreement, but others seemed less convinced. The Altarian delegate, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns, spoke up with a voice like wind chimes. "Proportionate." The human ambassador was unarmed. She posed no threat to anyone in this chamber. "She posed a threat to order," the Crimson delegate replied. "Her species is known for violence and aggression. History shows us that wherever humans go, conflict follows." That was Dante's cue. He activated his communication override, and suddenly his image appeared on every screen in the chamber. The assembly fell silent as they found themselves staring at a human male in dark tactical gear, his face partially obscured by shadows, but his eyes clearly visible, burning with controlled fury. "History also shows us," Dante said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics, "that wherever bullies go, someone eventually stands up to them." Panic rippled through the assembly. Security alerts began blaring, and defensive shields activated around several alcoves. But Dante had anticipated this, and his next words cut through the chaos like a blade. "My name is Dante Rivers. I'm what you might call Earth's backup plan. See, we tried sending you a diplomat, someone who believed in words and cooperation and all those pretty ideas about peaceful coexistence. You turned her into ash." Princess Zayla leaned forward in her chair, her dark eyes fixed on the screens showing Dante's image. There was something about him that called to her, something beyond the obvious danger he represented. His pain was genuine. She could sense that much through her empathic abilities. This was not a man driven by bloodlust or political ambition. This was someone who had lost something precious. "So now," Dante continued, "you get to deal with me, and I'm considerably less diplomatic." The Crimson delegate's multiple arms were already reaching for weapons. But Dante was faster. The sniper's bullet struck the alien's primary weapon arm, severing it cleanly and sending the energy pistol skittering across the floor. The delegate roared in pain and fury, his chitinous armor beginning to glow with internal heat. "That was a warning shot," Dante said calmly. "The next one won't be." "Security. Teams, converge on the upper levels," someone shouted. But Dante was already moving. His years of training kicked in as he began a fighting retreat through the maintenance shafts, using his knowledge of the station's layout to stay ahead of his pursuers. But as he moved, something unexpected happened. Princess Zayla rose from her chair and spoke, her voice carrying a natural authority that made the entire assembly pause. "Enough." The single word seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "This human speaks of loss and betrayal, and we respond with more violence. Are we so different from the primitives we claim to be superior to?" Thorek, her aide, reached for her arm. "Princess, you should not involve yourself." "I am already involved," she said, pulling away from his grasp. "We all are. When we allowed Ambassador Cross to be murdered in this chamber, we became complicit in an act of cowardice." The Crimson Delegate, clutching his severed arm, snarled at her. "The Zephyrian princess speaks like a human sympathizer. Perhaps the Syndicate should reconsider its treaties with your empire." Zayla's eyes flashed with dangerous light. "The Syndicate should reconsider many things, starting with whether it wishes to remain part of this council." High above, Dante had found a new position and was listening to the exchange with growing interest. The princess was taking enormous risks by speaking out, and he found himself impressed by her courage. Through his scope, he could see her clearly now, and what he saw took his breath away. She was beautiful, certainly, but it was more than that. There was a strength in her bearing, a nobility that had nothing to do with titles or bloodlines. This was someone who stood up for what was right, even when it was dangerous to do so. As if sensing his gaze, Zayla looked up toward the chamber's dome. Their eyes met across the vast space, and something passed between them that neither could quite deign recognition, perhaps, or understanding. "Princess," Dante said, his voice carrying through the chamber's speakers. "You mentioned cowardice. What would you call someone who hides behind politics while innocents die?" "I would call them afraid," she replied, still looking up toward his position. But fear can be overcome if one is willing to try. The security teams were closing in on Dante's position, but he found himself reluctant to leave. This conversation felt important, like something that could change everything if given the chance to develop. "And what would you call someone who chooses violence over diplomacy?" Zayla asked. Dante considered the question seriously. "That depends on whether diplomacy was ever really an option. Sometimes people only listen when they have no choice." "And sometimes," the princess said softly, "they listen because someone finally speaks their language." The first security team breached Dante's hiding spot just as he fired a smoke grenade and disappeared deeper into the station's bowels. But as he moved through the cramped passages, Princess Zayla's words echoed in his mind. Speak their language. What if there was another? Quay? Hours later, as the station's security forces conducted a thorough but unsuccessful search, Dante found himself in an abandoned section of the facility. The artificial gravity was lighter here, and the air recycling systems hummed with an older, less efficient rhythm. It was in this forgotten corner of the station that he encountered her again. Princess Zayla moved through the corridors with surprising stealth for someone wearing flowing diplomatic robes. She had dismissed her guards and left her aide behind, claiming she needed time to meditate on the day's events. In truth, she was, following an impulse she couldn't quite explain, drawn by the same force that had made her speak out in the assembly. She found Dante in what had once been an observation lounge, sitting on the floor with his back against a large viewport that looked out into space. His rifle lay across his knees, but his hands were empty, and his posture suggested exhaustion more than alertness. "You came," he said without looking up, apparently unsurprised by her presence. "You knew I would?" "Hoped, maybe. You seem like someone who finishes what she starts." Zayla moved closer, her natural caution warring with curiosity. "And what have I started exactly?" "A conversation." The first honest one I've had since arriving at this place. She sat down beside him, close enough to study his profile, but far enough to retreat if necessary. You're not what I expected a human assassin to look like. I'm not an assassin. I'm a soldier. There's a difference. Which is, soldiers fight for something they believe in. Assassins just kill for money. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars wheel slowly past the viewport. Finally, Zayla spoke again. Your ambassador, Helena Cross. You knew her personally. It wasn't a question, and Dante didn't treat it as one. We went through training together. She was the best of us. She believed humanity could be more than just another warlike species clawing for territory. And you don't believe that? Dante turned to look at her directly for the first time, and Zayla felt her breath catch. His eyes held depths of pain and hope that her empathic senses could barely process. I want to, he said quietly. But every time we try to reach out, someone slaps our hand away. Eventually, you stop reaching. Not everyone, Zayla said. Some of us are still willing to reach back. Their hands were resting on the floor between them, and somehow, without either quite realizing how it happened, their fingers intertwined. The contact sent a shock through both of them, but neither pulled away. This is dangerous, Zayla whispered. Most worthwhile things are, Dante replied. They talked through the night cycle, sharing stories of their worlds, their hopes, their fears. Dante learned that Zayla was not just a princess, but a trained diplomat and scholar. Someone who had spent her life studying other cultures and searching for common ground. Zayla discovered that Dante was not just a soldier, but an artist and philosopher, someone who painted watercolors in his spare time and quoted ancient poetry. As the artificial dawn began to brighten the viewport, they both realized that something fundamental had changed. The attraction between them was undeniable, but it was more than physical. They understood each other in ways that transcended species, culture, and the political realities that should have kept them apart. When this is over, Dante said, assuming we both survive what's coming, would you? Yes, Zayla said before he could finish the question. Whatever you're asking, yes. Their first kiss was tentative, almost hesitant, as if they were afraid the magic of the moment might shatter. But when their lips met, it was like two pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. The universe suddenly made sense in a way it never had before. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their hearts racing with possibilities and dangers in equal measure. The Council will never accept this, Zayla said, though she made no move to pull away from his embrace. Then maybe it's time for the Council to change, Dante replied. Or maybe it's time for us to stop caring what they think. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the political machinations of mortals. But somewhere in that vast cosmos, two hearts had found each other across the impossible divide of space and prejudice, and that perhaps was the beginning of something that could change everything. The rebellion of love had begun, and neither the Galactic Council nor the forces arrayed against them would ever be the same. The emergency council session convened at dawn, but the chamber felt different now. Word of Princess Zayla's disappearance had spread through the diplomatic quarters like wildfire, and rumors about her alleged involvement with the human intruder had created an atmosphere of barely controlled chaos. Representatives whispered, among themselves in their native languages, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping conversations. General Thyman of the Crimson Syndicate sat in his reinforced alcove, his remaining arms gesturing angrily as he spoke to his subordinates. The loss of his primary weapon limb had been replaced with a crude cybernetic prosthetic, its red glow pulsing in rhythm with his rage. Beside him, 3 heavily armed Syndicate enforcers stood ready for violence. Find them both, Thyman snarled, his mechanical translator amplifying his words throughout the chamber. The princess has been compromised by human influence. She is no longer fit to represent her people. In the Zephyrian section, Thorek paced nervously, his scarred features creased with worry. As Princess Zayla's aide and protector, her disappearance reflected poorly on his abilities, but more than that, he genuinely cared for her welfare. The other Zephyrian delegates looked to him for guidance, but he had none to offer. Far below the main assembly, In the station's deepest maintenance levels, Dante and Zayla had found refuge in an abandoned storage bay. The space was cramped and dimly lit, filled with obsolete equipment and forgotten supplies, but it offered them privacy and time to plan their next move. Zayla had traded her flowing diplomatic robes for practical cargo pants and a fitted jacket that Dante had procured from a supply locker. The change in attire did nothing to diminish her natural beauty, but it transformed her from a diplomatic princess into someone who looked ready for action. The Syndicate will use my absence to push for a military response against Earth, she said, studying a holographic display of the station's layout that Dante had projected from his tactical computer. They've been looking for an excuse to expand their territory, and Earth's mineral-rich system would be quite a prize. Dante nodded grimly. My people won't go down without a fight, but we're outnumbered and outgunned. The Syndicate has been building their fleet for decades. Not just the Syndicate, Zayla said quietly. I've been monitoring communications from my own people. There are factions within the Zephyrian Empire that see humans as a threat to galactic stability. They would support military action if it meant preserving the status quo. Their planning was interrupted by a soft chime from Dante's communication device. He frowned as he recognized the encryption pattern. It was from Earth, but using an emergency frequency that should have been impossible to access from their current location. Dante, this is Commander Stella Nova aboard the EDF Defiance. Do you copy? Dante's eyes widened. The Defiance was Earth's newest deep space cruiser, supposedly still undergoing trials in the Sol system. Commander Nova, this is Rivers. How the hell did you get out here so fast? Experimental drive system, need-to-know basis. We've been monitoring the situation through your feeds. Is it true about the princess? Dante glanced at Zayla, who nodded. It's true. She's with me, and she's on our side. Good, because we're going to need all the allies we can get. Long-range sensors are picking up a massive Syndicate fleet moving toward the Council station. They're not here for negotiations. The implications hit both Dante and Zayla simultaneously. The Syndicate wasn't just planning to deal with them. They were preparing to take control of the entire Galactic Council by force. How long do we have? Zayla asked, leaning close to the communication device. Princess? This is Nova. Based on their current trajectory, maybe 6 hours before they reach optimal attack position. Dante's mind raced through possibilities. What assets do we have? The Defiance, plus whatever allies we can rally from the Council members. But Dante, most of the representatives' ships are diplomatic vessels. They're not equipped for combat. Mine is. The voice came from behind them, and both Dante and Zayla spun around to find Thorek standing in the doorway of their hiding place. The Zephyrian warrior's scarred face was unreadable, but his weapon remained holstered. Thorek! Zayla exclaimed, relief and concern warring in her voice. How did you find us? I know you better than you think, Princess, and I know when you're fighting for something you believe in. He stepped into the room, his eyes taking in their makeshift command center. The question is, are you fighting for him or for something larger? Zayla stood straighter, her voice carrying the authority of her royal bloodline. I'm fighting for the future, Thorek, for the possibility that different species can work together instead of conquering each other. Thorek studied Dante for a long moment, his experienced warrior's gaze taking in everything from the human stance to the way he positioned himself protectively near the princess. And you, human? What are you fighting for? For the chance to prove that Helena was right, Dante said simply. That humanity deserves a place among the stars, and that love is stronger than fear. The Zephyrian warrior's stern expression cracked slightly, revealing what might have been the ghost of a smile. My ship is the Stormcutter, a battle cruiser with full military specifications. If we're going to make a stand against the Syndicate, we'll need firepower. Over the next few hours, their small rebellion grew. Commander Nova brought the Defiance into the station's defensive perimeter, while Thorek used his contacts to quietly rally Zephyrian military units that had grown tired of the Syndicate's bullying. Other species began to take notice as well. The Altarian delegate, the crystalline being who had spoken out during the previous session, approached them through intermediaries. Her people were pacifists by nature, but their ships possessed powerful defensive technologies that could be invaluable in the coming battle. Even more surprising was the arrival of Korax, a Zephyrian rebel leader who had been fighting against the Empire's more authoritarian elements for years. He emerged from the shadows with a small fleet of modified civilian vessels and a burning desire to see the old order changed. "Princess," he said when he met Zayla in person, "I never thought I would fight alongside royalty, and I never thought I would need to rebel against my own people," she replied. "But sometimes circumstances force us to become more than we were." As the Syndicate fleet drew closer, Dante found himself in the unexpected position of coordinating a multi-species defense force. His military training had prepared him for combat, but not for diplomacy on this scale. Fortunately, he had help. Zayla proved to be a natural strategist, her diplomatic experience translating surprisingly well to military planning. She understood the political implications of every move, the cultural sensitivities that needed to be considered, and most importantly, how to inspire beings from different worlds to fight for a common cause. "This isn't just about stopping the Syndicate," she addressed the assembled fleet commanders via holographic conference. "This is about proving that cooperation is possible, that diversity makes us stronger rather than weaker." The battle, when it came, was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The Syndicate fleet was larger and more heavily armed, but the defenders fought with a coordination that surprised everyone, including themselves. Human tactics blended with Zephyrian honor codes and Altarian defensive technologies to create something entirely new. Dante piloted a fighter craft alongside Zayla, their ships dancing through space in perfect harmony as they targeted Syndicate command vessels. Their connection, forged in conversation and deepened by love, allowed them to anticipate each other's moves with an almost telepathic precision. "Incoming fighters on your 6, Zayla called out, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "I see them," Dante replied, rolling his ship just as plasma bolts seared the space where he had been moments before. "Thanks for the heads up, beautiful." Even in the middle of combat, her laughter made his heart soar. The turning point came when General Thyman himself entered the battle in a massive dreadnought, its weapon systems capable of destroying smaller ships with single shots. He targeted the Council station directly, apparently willing to destroy the seat of galactic government rather than see it fall into the hands of what he called human sympathizers. That was when President Diana Heart of Earth made her entrance. The most powerful woman in human space arrived aboard a massive carrier vessel that had been hidden behind one of the system's outer planets. With her came the full might of Earth's defense fleet, no longer hiding their capabilities but revealing the true extent of human military technology. "This is President Heart to all vessels." Her voice cut through the communication channels with crystal clarity. "The United Earth Defense Force stands with our allies. Let's show the galaxy what cooperation looks like." The combined fleet overwhelmed the Syndicate forces through superior coordination rather than raw firepower. Ships that should have been natural enemies fought side by side, their crews learning to trust each other in the crucible of battle. When Thyman's dreadnought finally fell, its destruction marked not just the end of the battle, but the beginning of a new era. The Syndicate's power was broken, and with it, the old order that had kept species separated by fear and mistrust. In the aftermath, as rescue crews worked to save survivors from both sides, and diplomats began the delicate work of rebuilding the Council, Dante and Zayla found themselves standing together on the observation deck of the rebuilt assembly hall. "So what happens now?" Dante asked, his arm around her waist as they watched ships from dozens of worlds working together to repair the damage. "Now we prove that this wasn't just a moment of desperation," Zayla replied, leaning into his embrace. "We build something better. Something that lasts." Their wedding, held 6 months later on a neutral world chosen specifically for its symbolic importance, was attended by representatives from every major species in the galaxy. It was broadcast across known space, a celebration not just of their love but of the possibilities that love could create. Helena Cross would have been proud. Her death had been the catalyst for change. But it was love that had ultimately triumphed over fear and hatred. As Dante and Zayla exchanged vows in a ceremony that blended human and Zephyrian traditions, the galaxy watched and learned that some Bonds truly are stronger than the vastness of space itself. The future they built together became a testament to the power of understanding, cooperation, and the simple but revolutionary idea that love conquers all. The Galactic Council was reborn. That day, not as a gathering of separate species protecting their own interests, but as a true alliance of worlds working toward a common future. And at its heart, guiding its decisions and inspiring its actions, was the love story that had changed everything. In the end, it wasn't weapons or politics that saved the galaxy. It was two hearts that refused to be kept apart by the artificial boundaries others had created. Their love became the foundation upon which a new age of peace and cooperation was built, proving once and for all that when it comes to the things that truly matter, love always finds a way.